we have created this whole post-industrial revolution kind of idea that humans are the center of everything. And so part of what I think is pretty intriguing for me is thinking about how artificial intelligence is actually something new we're introducing something new into the ecosystem. And so now is the time to start thinking about this idea of decentering the human from the ecosystem, right? And putting us, not eliminating us, not saying we're not important, but putting us back where we belong as a part of a system, and AI being part of that system too.
Welcome to the Humanity Code Conversations. I'm Heidi Lorenzen, and today we'll explore another perspective on intentionally shaping the future with AI, where our technology amplifies our shared humanity rather than diminishes it. Today I'm joined by the amazing Kim Carson. Kim places herself at the intersection of tech, impact, and equity wherever she goes. She's currently the Interim Chief of Staff and VC2B at Imagine Global, a global venture capital and studio ecosystem expanding the impact of AI and deep tech to address the greatest challenges facing humanity. Kim previously founded and was CEO of the visionary company Parallax Futures, which diversifies AI leadership and technology by creating what she calls conceptual technologists. She's also held multiple leadership positions in academia and in tech, most notably for IBM Watson, one of the OG AI applications back in the day. Kim's also an author and has spoken at numerous high-profile events like Summit at Sea, TEDx, and Baron Davis's Business Inside the Game, otherwise known as BIG. Her excitement and critical thinking about the future is energizing, and I'm so delighted to have her here today to share her outlook on how to create, lead, and invest in a stronger future for humanity in connection with AI. Thank you so much, Kim, for joining me. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it has. It's so good to see you, Heidi.
Well, let's start with your career has been deeply tied for a long time to AI and technology's potential for social good. What
Yeah.
drives you, and how have your core beliefs and motivation around it changed over time, especially now that free generative AI is available to pretty much anyone with internet access?
I think my kind of foray into what could be and the promises of artificial intelligence started as a young Star Trek fan. As many of us, I was deeply embedded in sci-fi and kind of thinking about what could happen, what could be the case if we were able to actually interface with new types of intelligence. I think that started the journey, but I got really lucky in that I was asked to work with IBM Watson while it was still in formative research stages to think about how we might use artificial intelligence to actually tackle social problems. And so my area that I worked on was education, and we started by trying to make a artificial intelligent teacher companion specifically for underserved schools that were impacted with impacted classrooms. And the thought was that by using, AI, we could expand the capabilities of the teachers and allow them to actually customize and personalize learning experiences for kids. And so I always say that I feel really lucky that that was, a decade ago, and that was my first kind of jump into AI. It really was never about how we make ourselves more efficient or how we get more work done in the
Right.
day. It was always about how we leverage this kind of exponential technology for good.
Enhance the human experience,
Yeah.
not replace it. Well,
Yeah.
let's jump to what you're up to today. So it's pretty
Yep.
astounding where you're putting your time. Imagine Global is $1 billion, and if I'm not mistaken, more than that, fund. And so you all have massive influence in shaping what companies will shape our future.
Yeah.
So looking ahead, what are what you would see as the most urgent investments that humanity should make related
Yeah.
to AI technologies to ensure the best outcomes? And what is Imagine Global's kind of, I guess, overarching thesis for this?
So I'll start by just saying that, our mission and vision is that we help mindful creators build better companies. And so that's kind of the tagline for Imagine Global, which is actually what I fell in love with and why I started to
No doubt.
align myself with our managing partner and work with her. And so the organization is actually operates around kind of three key pillars. There's expertise, there's innovation, and then there's capital. So this is our understanding that it's not just enough to throw billions and trillions of dollars at a problem. There actually needs to be other kind of factors in an ecosystem that actually create better innovation. So the company also has a global ecosystem of experts. We actually have the largest group of independent research scientists working on artificial intelligence in the world. So these are people that are not aligned with any of the big companies. And we also provide innovation services ourselves. And then, of course, the funding is, what you mentioned. That's really the underpinning and the fuel, as we like to call it, that supports entrepreneurs and creatives. And these pillars together form what we call a hub. Our real goal is in the next 18 months is to build globally tens of these types of hubs. And so we're already starting that process because one of the things that I also agree with Annie Chahal-Honan, who's our MP, is that everything is happening here in Silicon Valley. And you and I
Yeah.
are here and based in Silicon Valley, and that's great. But there's a lot of talent other places, and there's a lot of needs other places, and there's a lot of needs for people not to have everything based, all their data, all of their talent, all the expertise in one place. And so we really want to expand globally, expand that capability globally.
And different value sets and perspectives.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, yeah, we kind of think about ourselves as a bridge between like the independent communities that are working on these things, that are working on innovation, and the major technology companies. So we're still playing with them, but we see ourselves as really the bridge that fosters collaboration and not competition between
Yeah,
those
exactly.
worlds.
Truly
Yeah.
collective instead of
Yep.
just centralized and, 5 people on the planet.
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
on Imagine Global's homepage, there's a stat that says 63% of people do not trust AI and
Yeah.
believe it discriminates, shows bias, and isn't
Yep.
benefiting people like me. And there's
Yep.
another stat that says 73% of consumers are concerned about their data privacy.
Yep.
So, do you think people can, or I guess even should, overcome this lack of trust?
I think it's a possibility. And I think that one of the things that's kind of core to Imagine and how we think about things is that we can help that process. And how we help it is inclusivity and, really promoting beneficial AI. So AI right now, what we see in the news is all about like, hey, plan your vacation, or
Right,
here's a way to
exactly.
write new marketing copy.
Yeah.
And we're really talking about things where AI supports more societal and planetary well-being. So you think about things that are like AI, empathic AI in robotics for the elderly to help with loneliness, things like that that are really kind of core to our humanity versus things that are core to our workability, as I like to say.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so
that's a great,
that's really the
yeah.
focus. And I think that if we can get more people involved in those types of things, and we can get more of the world actually talking about, thinking about the problems that they have, the societal problems that they have, or the community problems that they have, then we can push the needle a little bit on the trust, right? So right now,
Mhm.
it's like everything's happening over there. It's happening,
Right.
from Microsoft or OpenAI or Anthropic. And if I'm not there, if I'm, based in a village in Africa, or I'm based in Europe or the Middle East or South America somewhere, then that's a reason to not trust, because I don't
Yeah.
know, I have no visibility into what's going on.
Yeah.
So if
It's
we
being done
bring
to me.
exactly. And so, I think our purpose is to bring the innovation centers, so those hubs that I was talking about, to the communities versus trying to bring the communities to the AI. We bring the AI to the communities so that we can really start to improve upon that trust and really get more of humanity involved in the creation and maintenance of these systems, and more around the sovereignty of their own data. So we
Right.
are having conversations with folks about like Can you monetize your own data? Are there ways that you can opt in or opt out about what models are using your data? I think those are very worthwhile conversations to have.
Yeah, so it's more the empowerment of them and involving them in it as opposed to, public education or an awareness or
Correct, correct, correct. I think there's a lot going on in terms of public education awareness, and I think those are great efforts to have. But in my experience, the best way to get people to really build the trust and get involved is to actually do things in their local
Yep.
community, right? Like let's look at
Yep.
the things that are plaguing you in your community and how we might leverage this technology to help. And in that, you get great talent that you weren't expecting. It just emerges. Yeah, yeah.
And, the lack of trust is valid. And I know you and I share the view that if we, the collective we here, just keep developing and training AI with the same mindsets and desired outcomes that we've had
Yep,
in the past and how we've done everything to date, that we're just going to encode our problems, our foibles, our biases, all those things into it.
absolutely, absolutely.
And you've spent a lot of your life's work to ensure that's not the case and ensure that companies and people are fusing what you call conceptual and
Yeah.
nonlinear thinking with the technological acumen to develop AI. So explain to the audience what that means and why that's so important.
One of the things that we've been talking about a lot recently is there's this big push on transformers and large language models. However, you and I, as we're talking right now, the language that we're speaking is only about 2% of how we're communicating, right? So we're communicating with expression, we're communicating through intuition, we're communicating with, all of these other different pieces and parts. And so thinking about it like that helps me think about, how we might expand what people can get involved in. So I may not be somebody who can get involved in a large language model, but I may be somebody who can get involved in the psychology of something or the body and how those things happen. And so when I think about conceptual technology and I think about kind of nonlinear thinking, I actually is like you go forward to go back kind of a thing. So I think about indigenous cultures and I think about
Well,
how we have created this whole post-industrial revolution kind of idea that humans are the center of everything. We even
right.
use it
Yep.
when we talk about creating technology. We say human-centered design and human-centered this and human-centered that, but we're actually part of a much larger ecosystem. And when I think about from a systems thinking perspective, they always say, look at the problem and then ask why the problem exists. In my way, I always think about, why 5 times, why? And I get
Right.
to all the time. Well, it comes a lot of the times from this idea of centering ourselves as more important than the world around us. And so then we get things like climate change, right? We get things like because we've all of a sudden set ourselves apart from and aside of and don't realize until there's a crisis that that's actually not the way that we should be doing things. And so part of what I think is pretty intriguing for me is thinking about how artificial intelligence is actually something new we're introducing something new into the ecosystem. And so now is the time to start thinking about this idea of decentering the human from the ecosystem, right? And putting us
More
not eliminating us, not saying we're not important, but putting us back where we belong as a part of a system.
kind
And
of like the
AI being
modern
part of
day
that
having.
system too.
Yeah, it's kind of like the modern day that where we thought of the version of Earth being the center of the solar system, right? It's the
You
modern
got
day
it.
version of that.
You
Yeah.
got it. You got it. And so it's like, all of these things work together and we can only leverage the best out of that kind of working together if we consider ourselves not so special, right? Not the most special thing. I don't know, Heidi, if you met Dekai, but
Sure. Know him well.
he's a good friend, and we often talk about this idea of raising AI, which is his new book that's coming
Yes,
out,
like the call.
and thinking about how if you were raising a child, you wouldn't be upset if the child actually was smarter than you or didn't take on your biases or pointed things back at you that maybe you need to pay attention to. And really, that's something that is, to me, really exciting about where we could take AI, right? it could actually uplift us as
Yep.
humans and improve our humanity, but only if we are making sure that we're not deciding that it's subservient to us.
Right.
And so these are the things that I like to think about and write about.
Toward that end, so I think that we suffer from a real lack of vision as a species
Yeah.
about, what a good future could look like. And I think a lot of that is that kind of self narcissism that you were describing, the human, centricity that we think about. What is your vision? Like if all things went incredibly well with AI and we really leveraged it, right? If we really leveraged it for good, if we really leveraged it to uplift us, make us better, what would that world look like?
Well, I can imagine that a lot of the time that we spend now, that we either spend doing things we don't like or that we don't need to do, actually go away. And so for me, that means thinking about, well, what happens to us in our time? We now have this time, and what are we doing with that time? And I'm an optimist. I think that, one of the things that we do well, maybe the best, maybe not, science will tell us, but is connect and actually sit together and authentically connect and actually empathize and build kind of trust and love and these types of things that are not tangible. And so I could see humans actually having that role in our ecosystem and having other things have other roles in the ecosystem. I mean, I also see, because I'm a sci-fi nut, right? Like I see all sorts of fun stuff too, right? Like, so there's definitely a world that becomes more and more connected globally. I think we're already there. I think one of the things that we're still fighting through, and we can see it in the latest elections, and we can see it is this idea of separations by borders and nation states and these types of things. And
You're all made up.
what yeah, it's all kind of made up and we're all kind of the same. And what separates you and I genetically is not even worth us talking about. And so, how do we kind of, come together as a species to really do what humans do best, which I think is, like I said, connect. I think it's also explore, think about innovating. What are the next things that are coming? We do that really well. And so, I see a world where we get to spend our time doing that. We're instead of spending our time doing the things that, like I said, don't really matter.
That we weren't, yeah, or we just weren't really inherently built for. I see a future very similar. And I think what concerns me and most people is that point in between from where we are now to this potentially better future. And we have to take, some really concerted efforts and steps right now to make sure that that's the outcome and not some other.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a massive transition, massive transformation, massive adjustment for
Yeah.
people and affecting some more than others. How can we mitigate some of that?
I think that there is a lot to be said for these kinds of conversations that you and I are having right now, right? So that's been another part of what I like to do in my career is make sure that we're creating the spaces for these
Yes.
conversations to happen. I think that helps with the fear. It helps with the trust. It helps with people feeling like they can actually be a part of the solution. And it's going to take that. It's going to take a rallying cry, right? Like of all of us to come together to be like, no, we're not going to take it for granted that things are going to go badly. We're gonna exert as much influence as we can to make sure that things go well. And so that's part of it. I think the other part of it is really around education and understanding of the technology and what the technology is actually can do and cannot do. I hear things all the time about this is going to be like this or this is going to be like that, and it's really, unfounded, not scientific. There's not a lot of evidence behind what people think AI will actually do to them or for them.
What are
And
some
so
of the
I think,
biggest fears?
yeah, people are like, it's going to be sentient, and then we're going to have Terminator, and then this
Right.
is going to happen, and that's going to happen, and I'm like, well, maybe at one point it will, but we're not there yet. We still have a long way to go, and what I think it's important for people to understand is that they can impact it now, today,
Right.
so
Yeah.
that we don't have a Terminator, right? Like that was something I used to say all the time in the Watson days is like, because people were very scared 10 years ago, like, even more so than now. And I would say, well, it's up to you if you get involved or you don't get involved. And your expansion can be as much as what I would say is Terminator versus Jarvis, right? Like nobody wants a Terminator, but everybody wants Iron Man's Jarvis, right? Like I
Yeah,
definitely want that sidekick that can help me navigate my life and
great
help me be a
analogy.
better person. And so I think that's the key, is making sure that people are feeling like it's a safe space for them to come and ask questions, to understand. You don't have to be a technologist to. That's the great thing about AI, right? Like, is you don't have to be deeply technical to get involved. And so, bringing more and more people into the conversation is definitely the goal.
Shifting to work and jobs again, because that is very practical kind of
Yep.
fears and concerns. And that farmers insurance commercial goes, you know a thing or two because you've seen a thing or two in your
Right.
career and all the
Right.
roles that you've had. And what are some of the ways that you've seen companies successfully be more intentional and ethical into their AI development, whether a smaller company or a larger company? And where do you see us, and collective us, still falling short?
The most successful folks have been people who are the most inclusive. So I'm a big believer, as you know, Heidi, of teams that are the most diverse and eclectic team that you can find. Because, the analogy I always use is if you're going to be in an escape room, and you have the
Yeah,
choice of either being around 10 people like you,
right.
exactly like you, that think like you and that do the things that you do, or you have a team of people that everybody has a different talent and everybody is good at something different. Who are you going to choose for the escape room? So if modernity right now is an escape room, I'm
Right.
taking the latter team, right? Like
Yeah,
I
I
want
love that.
people that complement my strengths, and that I can help and they can help me, and we can really work together as a team. So I think companies that have been successful are the ones that actually understand that, right off the bat. I think that they're getting there. It's a slow roll. There's a lot of emphasis on the technical, or at least there had been. Interestingly enough, I have a good friend who is getting their PhD right now in machine learning. And what's really super interesting is, this was, of course, the cream of the crop and still kind of is in terms of like job, right? But as she's writing her dissertation, every time she finishes a chapter is obsolete.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let's think about that, right? So then it's like, what is the actual role that somebody needs? Is it really ML researcher, or is it really something else? And so I think companies that think about things like that are going to be much more successful than companies that don't. I also think that there is a big, big, big issue with large language models and their drain on planetary resources. So energy and cooling and water, and those things we already know are in crisis and short supply. And so people will be successful as they're thinking about that first. I know there's a number of companies that are thinking about on edge models, like how they run on CPUs instead of GPUs. There's also a number of people that are thinking about compression of models and different types of data extraction servers. And so I think there's definitely an emerging field around that. If I had a youngster came to me today and said, where should I put my energy in AI? I would say, think about climate issues and AI, because I think that there's definitely a lot of room there. And it'll be a really hot area for you to be playing in the years to come, because it's really a problem and we don't have any answers to it quite yet.
Yeah. Somewhat related, you've spoken about AI's potential to create new job categories. Are we yet seeing real sustainable, meaning long-term reliable job growth yet with AI? And again, kind of in this transition period that we're in right now, how can companies and industries even prepare for this and again ameliorating that rough potential transition?
Yeah, I don't think we're seeing the job growth yet. I don't think we are thinking about the things that are to come. I often think about, I guess it was just like 10 years ago, not even, that we even had the major of data scientists at the university level. And so you think about that, and we're far behind in terms of what are the jobs of the future, what are the things that are going to come. And so this is a rough time. I don't know if there's any other way to say it, right? Like we're in a transition period. But I do see that the data that we do have shows that while there will be substantial loss, there will also be substantial gain. And so, what I have been saying to people that I know, friends and family and such, is that are you going to get replaced today by AI? Probably not, but you will get replaced by somebody who's using AI. And so, one of the things that you can do in order to kind of make sure that you are, as an organization, keeping your people and keeping them happy is giving them AI training, making sure that they have the tools, making sure that they understand how to use the tools, but also giving them just kind of room to play. I think there's something about that that can actually
Mhm.
start to spark our imagination about things that should happen.
That's something that you've done so well. I mean, Parallax Futures is the perfect example of just, creating this huge sandbox for people's minds and brains to play. What are some of the projects or companies that you've seen then or seeing now with Imagine Global that are doing things that maybe are really mind bendy or people haven't heard of that are really going to have us rethink and get away from just the current job and work situation, but just think really
Yeah.
expansively about what AI can do.
I love the story of I have a friend, and he was just like on Time Magazine and all sorts of stuff. Will Hatcher, and Will is like this guy. I shouldn't say just this guy, but Will is a friend who had kind of a regular job, but on the side like produced beats, right? Like so he was kind of this beat maker and this comedian, and AI enabled him to create the number one viral song on TikTok last year.
Mm, very cool.
Everything from, and he did everything himself, from the production of the song to the business plan to like the go to market strategy. Everything was AI enabled him to actually do expand his own capabilities to a place where he has like a huge cult following, and he's making other songs, and he's like it's like taken him into like this whole new realm of possibility and creation. And that to me is amazing and fascinating. I love thinking about things that we now do as quote unquote hobbies because we don't see ourselves being able to actually do a full produced song by ourselves, or
Right.
make a movie by ourselves. I think about Sora and like that kind of those kinds of things, and now those possibilities are right in front of us. And to me, that's amazing and so fun, right? Because there's so much that comes into innovation that comes from imagination. And so
Kind of like watch out
there,
what you wish for, right?
exactly, exactly. And I this won't be a surprise to you, but I often say, if you want to know why right now everything is so downtrodden and dystopian, all you have to do is look at the art,
Yeah.
right? And it's because we reflect that. If
Yep.
you look at innovation in the last 50 years, and going back to my Star Trek in the beginning, and you look at Star Trek, a lot of the things we have today came from Star Trek. So there's a lot of artists and that kind of inspire technology, right? Art kind of inspires technology. And so I've made a career out of trying to inspire artists to think
Yeah.
about things in this like really expansive, positive way, because that to me is the way that we get the technology there, as opposed to get the technology that otherwise just destroys
Yeah.
us. And
Yeah, that's
so
that's
I've seen
so
a lot of that actually happening. And so there's a couple of startups that I'm super keen on right now that are a part of our ecosystem. One of them is making personalities for robots. They're actually diving into what are the components that make up a personality, and how could we use those components in order to enable an AI, so that AIs actually have their own personalities. I think that's
well.
so cool and so fun, right? Like thinking about things that otherwise other people are not thinking about. I have there's another company that's really interesting to me that's working on just how do we use the technology and these platforms to make new music, to expand our musical capabilities, to jam together remotely or around the world. How do we do that kind of a thing? And so anything for me that lights me up is really about the connection, less about competition and more about
Right.
collaboration and
Yeah.
connection. And so it's like there's a bunch of little startups that are just getting started that I'm really super excited about because I think that's where they're focused.
I love that, kind of at the core of all of those is this creation, imagination, art. And I love that connection that you drew with, a reflection of kind of our mindset. But then that becomes what we create because that's what we're imagining. And so, we either overtly or,
Yeah,
subconsciously, we're creating that and being able to help artists help us see things differently can really
right.
make a difference right now.
It's really true. And so yeah, and I'm into artists right now that are doing this and doing things that are super tongue in cheek. One person's thinking about how AI is going to come alive and it's going to destroy us and all this kind of stuff. And then a good artist friend of mine is thinking about, well, what if it just decides to prank us? What if it decides that joy is actually the thing it needs to imitate? And so it starts to like actually think about how it can get us to laugh more, how it can get us to do things like that more. And I think that's so funny
Yes,
and
please.
beautiful,
Yeah.
right? Right.
That's so cool. Imagine Global is really doing a good job, I think, of being intentional about balancing the work it does with, so it's directly having impact through the investments, the hubs, all that, but it's also investing profits, 10% of profits. The intent is there to redistribute it to foundations and nonprofits. And I think,
Yeah.
this is a little bit also creating that sandbox to play for people because, a lot of these organizations that maybe don't have the funds to be all that they can be. It's really supporting that. And I know you've worked at the intersection of both for profits and nonprofits. So how do you see ventures, either venture capital or companies balancing the financial returns with building a better future for humanity? I know there was a lot in there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a great question and it's something that we have been talking a lot about. And there is this right now, we always talk about the triple bottom line. So we want to build businesses within the ecosystem that prioritize people, planet, and profit. And profit because of the fuel, right? So you really need that fuel, at least in today's day and age, right?
Yep.
To
Right.
get to the
With our
next level.
systems. Yep.
Um, yeah. And so one of the things that we're talking about is like not just hey, here's 10% of our profits back to nonprofits, but actually, how do we help nonprofits think about new incentivization models? How do we have nonprofits think about how they get involved in that triple bottom line in a way that still holds true to their ideals, still holds true to their values, right? But gets them into a place where things are self-generating. Revenue is self-generating. There's not such a need for philanthropy, or there's much more impact that can be done because there's more resources in a community or for a community. And so I think part of what's so intriguing for me about joining Imagine is to think about these business models. Like, what are the things that we can do? What are the things that we can borrow from these otherwise two very divergent ecosystems, right? It's me again in that collaboration thing, right? Like,
Right.
how do we
Yeah.
come together
Bridging.
and think about how things actually could benefit the other side? And so from the on the for-profit side, that's really about how do we make sure things have impact, planetary and societal impact. and that are really good for us as humans. And then on the nonprofit side, it's like, how do we get you to a place where you can actually have a flywheel of revenue generation that actually keeps you self-sustaining and keeps you alive for forever, so you can continue to do the good work that you do forever. And so those are the things that are really exciting for me. In addition to, we have a really big emphasis at Imagine on personal and professional development. And so core in all of this is making sure that whoever's leading, whether it's on the nonprofit side or the for-profit side, is resilient and healthy and is able to tackle these very, very hard things.
Yeah.
Doing hard things takes a lot out of you, as you know,
Yeah. Yes,
as you and
indeed.
I both know, right? And so making sure that people, at the end of the day, have the things that they need, the resources that they need, the development, growth, learning that they need in order to tackle these big things and wake up every day and want to continue to tackle them is really, really important here.
I have one more question for you, but before that, is there anything else that we haven't touched upon that you were, that's really exciting you right now, or just you really think people should be thinking about?
Oh gosh, where to begin? I mean, for me, there's so much. There's so much that's super exciting. I think the biggest thing is just, I'll say it again, is just getting more and more people involved. I mean, I love what you're doing, Heidi, in terms of, a call out to humanity about how we move forward together in this next phase and this in between phase, right? As we get to the future. And I just want us to make sure that everybody knows that they're important, and that they have something to say and they have a voice, and that they use it, right? So that, as I said, I'm an internal optimist. I think that
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we all want good things to happen. And so the more of us that want good things to happen, the better.
Perfectly tied to the question that I had left for you. We here at the Humanity Code, we talk a lot about being the prompt, right? Play
Mhm.
on words with when you're talking with generative AI. We are giving AI the prompts, but we therefore can be the prompt to shaping the future
Yeah, I love
that we
that.
want with AI. And so, for any individuals who might at this moment be feeling powerless or disconnected from the AI scene, the AI revolution, whatever buzzword you want to use, what do you think are some of the practical steps that they can take to shape a future that we both see as one where technology is serving and uplifting humanity?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with a curiosity for me always. And so I think one of the things to do is that it's really easy to sit back and have these conjectures of like, oh, this is awful and this is what's going to happen. But I think the more that you can approach these things with curiosity, like, well, what does it really look like when a language model gets run? Or what is it? Where could I start? Right? Even a question about like, where should I start, that you can pose to your community is a really great thing to do. I often, when I'm having a conversation or I'm speaking, I often tell people to the onus is on them to start having the conversations with their own community. Like, talk to people. Next week is Thanksgiving. Talk to people at Thanksgiving. What kinds of AI
Had those
tools are
hard
you using?
conversations.
Yeah, what kinds of AI tools are you using? If you're not using any, why aren't you using them? Start the conversations. I think it's only going to get better if we get more people involved. And the only way to get more people involved is to have the conversations. And so
Yeah.
that's really what I think is going to be the wave. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, that that curiosity and conversations that can kind of reframe mindsets if you're curious instead of going at it with a preconceived notion of how it's going to turn out.
Correct. And so, yeah, I like to approach everything with curiosity. But yeah, I really think in regards to new technology, it's just the best way to get yourself involved, because you never know. Once you ask a question, you may have an idea. You may inspire you to be like, somebody says, you say, well, what about an AI that does this? And somebody goes, oh, that doesn't exist. And all of a sudden, you are now a creator of a new kind of
Right. Yeah.
AI. And so
Yeah.
we never know where that's going to come from.
Totally. I mean, we're all have become sort of omnipotent in a way with
Yep.
with this power of AI.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much, Kim, for hanging out with me today and bringing
Thank you,
your
Heidi.
usual extremely fresh perspective to our audience. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Humanity Code Conversations. Remember, our future with AI is being written now and by us. Let's ensure it's a story that honors and elevates our shared humanity.